Welcome to the garden. So I've always loved gardening ever since I was little. My mom used to garden with me, and we love having all of the fresh food to eat, so we knew that we wanted to have a basic garden to get us started this year, and then eventually it'll grow into a larger garden that can help sustain our family for longer portions of the year. This year we were just planning to eat as much as we can fresh. We didn't really want to can and heat up the bus because it's harder to cool the bus while we are heating it up to process canning. So this year, basically, our main purpose was to eat fresh. So we didn't do a ton of anything. Also because we didn't have water. So this spring, we were just winging it and relying on when it rained. Once, then in July-ish, it kind of stops raining. So we knew we had to get a water system figured out. So Josh helped me do that. We got a whole bunch of food grade totes, IBC totes, that can each hold 275 gallons of water. So if you look up here, we have our food grade totes. We have 4 of them. We use 3 of those for the garden, and then 1 we just keep full for fire suppression in case anything were to happen here. We can always have 1 completely full. The other 3 we keep up on the hill, as you see here, because then we can use gravity to drain the water because they aren't pressurized. So the water will literally just drain from these totes through the hose, and then I hand water the garden with my watering can. So everything's a little bit behind because we didn't get water exactly when I needed to water things. There were some dry spells in between. So some of my stuff isn't as far along as like the gardeners in town where they've had water all season. But regardless, it still brings me a lot of joy, and we've still gotten a ton of fresh stuff from it. So let's give you a little tour of what we've got in our garden. So this whole area was a really crazy grade that basically went straight from the bottom of the shop, and it was steep. So Josh dug all of this out. It was clay here, which if you're a gardener, you know that clay is not ideal for plants. It holds water too much during the rain, and it dries out to become a brick when it's dry. So that was not ideal. So Josh took all of that junky soil out, brought in some topsoil for me, and so now I have amazing garden soil, which is so nice. And then we were cutting down trees to clear and do some fireproofing. So with that, we recycled some of our posts to make a real rustic, deer-proof fence. So I'm sure that this will get expanded upon later, but for this year's impromptu winging it garden, it works amazing. I have not had deer in here. So what we've got, I decided to get us 4 tomato plants. So I have a cherry, and then some, at least 1 heirloom. I can't remember what these 2 guys are, but they're normal tomatoes, not cherry ones. I have 2 peppers. I think one is gonna be a jalapeno and the other one is a bell pepper. I don't have peppers on them yet. They've been kind of slow. So, oh, this one has 2 little baby ones. 2 little baby ones. Right there. The peas right here, I knew I'd want to plant those right away because they like the cooler weather and they don't like it when it's hot. So you can tell that these are almost done. So in between them, I planted cucumbers to take up the space once they died so that the cucumbers could have more space, and I knew that the peas would be gone. So those cucumbers are just starting to take off. This is my biggest one, so it's a little bit behind. Everyone in town already has cucumbers, but this is gonna be my first one. So it took a little bit for those to take off. And then here I decided to do a little bit of artistic stuff. I had a lot of struggles with stuff actually coming up. I experimented with some flowers, and I haven't done flowers before, and it's a new area. So between the fact that I haven't grown flowers before, and we're in a new area where I don't know what the weeds look like, that was a little difficult, because I couldn't tell what was keep versus weed out. So that was a little rough, and so my rows aren't exactly super great. So I tried to do some flowers. This is amaranth and some hollyhocks. Then I have some lettuce. And then over here, I just kind of did like a little wildflower bed, if you will. In here I did some, let's see, what are they called? Nasturtiums. Those have all came and went. I think they got too dry in that in-between watering phase. And then these are some dark purple, extra moody bachelor buttons. So these, I love them so much. So I've actually been collecting seeds from these because some of these are starting to have seeds to save for next year. I like to have some flowers in with my vegetables because that helps bring pollinators in to the vegetable garden. So that's just something that I like to do. Here I have a whole bunch of cilantro. This is kind of like my herb section in here in the middle. I have a whole bunch of cilantro. This is obviously trying to go to seed, so I have some smaller stuff started on the edges to help fill in for when I have more tomatoes ripe. I have a couple different oregano plants. I have some thyme. This one was a fun one that I found just this last year at our local gardening place. It's a rosemary, but it's barbecue, so it gives a really neat flavor to what we're eating. Then this guy here is probably one of my favorite herbs. This is called marjoram. It's not super traditional and used a lot, but it has got to be probably my favorite. I use that one a lot, to the point where I have multiple plants of that. I have some flowers here, some lilies and some dahlias. Josh's parents gave us those for our anniversary, so I thought that would be a nice little pop of color to draw some pollinators in. Then here, this is a more traditional bed. I think I want to do more beds like this in the future, but then also give myself a little bit wider walkway so I can get wheelbarrows in here. So along this whole side, these are all carrots. I'm wanting to thin some of these out now because they're a good size and we're out of carrots, and then it'll leave more room for the other carrots to grow in between, and the ones that I leave will have a chance to get bigger versus fighting for the ones that I'm gonna weed out. These bigger plants here are broccolis, and then these guys here are Swiss chard. They are like a leafy green that's more commonly grown in the south. I love how they look. So I'm not such a fan of the actual leafy green, but I love how they look so much that I thought they'd just be a pretty plant to have in the garden. Then this bed is hard to see. This was very much a learning year for myself of how to seed things in the ground, because when I have the space and capability, I'd love to start stuff inside in trays with like heating mats and domed covers, and I can really tell what's starting easier and what how things are doing. I have some onions here that I planted it in just in the ground as seeds, so they're hard to find. Because we didn't have water, some of my initial struggles were keeping the ground moist without it drying out in between rainy days. So I threw down some of these pine boughs to act as a mulch and help retain some of that moisture. The problem is when I direct seeded, then the pine boughs suppressed my plants. When I have them, once I have established plants, this works great because they suppress the weeds. But they also suppressed what I wanted to grow. So that didn't work super great, but it did work medium good once I had stuff up. So the best example I have is back at my herb garden. I have no weeds in that bed because all of those I put in as established plants. So there's no weeds there. So that worked great. Then over here I have my rhubarb plants. So in preparation for us moving, my mom had planned ahead probably like 2 or 3 years ago. She started dividing her rhubarb plants for me to take for when we found a place. So these all came from my mom, and so they're quite special to me. They're still getting acquainted with and getting established. So I've only picked from them a little bit this year, but next year I should be able to pick a whole lot more. These will come back next year after winter. They are a perennial plant. And then this is more carrots. I actually planted these carrots before those other ones that are bigger, but this area doesn't get as much sunlight, so you can tell that they're way smaller. So, and I think we'll go over to that other area later, but I have a second garden that gets way more sun, so I think I'm going to try and put the vegetables there next year, because in general, all vegetables really like a lot of sun. This spot, since we're by the building, doesn't get any like afternoon, evening sun, so everything really is wanting more sun than it's getting. So that might be part of why some of my stuff is lagging behind the true gardeners that I've talked to in town. I have one more of my rhubarb plants. This is chives. We rescued this from the bus. A lot of our herbs that didn't die over winter, we took from the front dash of the bus and put them in the ground so that they will get re-energized. We'll take them, the ones that won't overwinter, we'll take those and put them back in the bus so that we can use them over the winter when we do start traveling again. But this just gets them way stronger, way happier, way healthier. The chives is funny because when it is in the bus, it is Juniper's favorite. He is about the only one who eats chives in the bus, because I always forget to eat it, and then I don't really want to eat it after Juniper's been eating it. So, but it's starting to flower now. It's very, very pretty. I have another rosemary plant. My garlic is about ready to dig up, so I'm thinking I'll probably try and do that this weekend. And then I've got some sage. So that one will be able to overwinter, so I might divide it so I have some in the bus and then some that stays here to overwinter and get bigger for next year.
And we have one random fern just growing in the garden.
Yeah, I haven't done a whole lot of weeding here, so it's really just been what I put down as that pine bough suppression, and I've just kind of like left it because I've had so many other things going on. So it's worked really, really well because I've done almost no weeding here, which you could probably tell. But in general, it's worked pretty darn well. So this was all I was planning on for a garden when we started this spring, because I didn't know when we were going to get water. And so everything in here, I probably spent, what, 30 bucks on seeds between my different types of seeds. Some of them I had already. So I didn't want to invest too much because I didn't know when we were going to get water, and I knew that July would get really hard for a water source for things to just survive on their own without rain. So I was kind of nervous at the beginning of spring and just like willing to let stuff die. And then as spring went along, I obviously got more attached to everything, as always. So then I begged Josh to help me with the backhoe so that we could get our water. So we had to clear our trail, get the totes filled, and then I've been hand watering every night, and so I'm actually super happy with where our garden is now. So actually, this is not our only garden, even though I was intending it to be initially. So let's head over there next. This garden I wasn't planning on really at all. It really came into existence because of my mom. So if we rewind in time back to when Josh's parents were here, we didn't have this garden, we didn't have the other garden, we just had a big old slope that Josh has since moved, and to help slope our driveway and landing pad out away from the shop so everything drains nicely. So he was in the process of doing that, and then Josh's parents went home. His dad offered to drive out a cargo trailer of essentials for us, and so with that it included our smoker, our garden bench, a whole bunch of tools. And then because he was doing such a quick trip out from South Dakota, a straight shot here, my mom decided to dig up and split a whole bunch of her plants for me to have here. And so she is quite the gardener, and so she decided to send way more than I was expecting, so I didn't have a place for them. So when Josh's dad got here, Josh was like, oh, we need another garden. So he quick made a garden for me, and I put all of the perennials that mom had split for me in here, and then the rest I just seeded with some annuals. And so let's do a little tour of what we've got here. So the other garden is primarily vegetables. This one is primarily flowers with just a few vegetables. So in here, these tall guys, some of them are taller than me. They're quite hard to water. These are cosmos. Here on this side, I was gonna have some taller stuff to kind of make a border, and they didn't come up because it was too far in between rains to really get those germinated. So I didn't have very good luck with the stuff on this side. So I just let it be. This is called a moss rose. So you can see that they're kind of rose-like flowers, but it's more of like a succulent. It has very almost plasticky type leaves. Then further in here I have 4 o'clocks. I really don't know what these are. Like I said, I haven't really grown flowers on my own. So a lot of these has just been leaving stuff, seeing if it flowers, and then making sure it's not a weed, because if it's a weed, I want to pull it before it flowers and seeds and makes more weeds. So that's kind of been this year's process. I did get 2 strawberries from the local greenhouse, so I have 2 of those. This one's starting to send out some runners, so I should be able to have more strawberries for next year. I think I do want to relocate this so they don't spread everywhere right here, but for now it's a great spot for it. I love these. These are California poppies, and they are the same color as our mailbox. Our mailbox, we painted an orange color that is called California poppy. So it is so true to color, and I love them so much. They're such a fun pop of color. In there, those orange flowers are calendula. Those were ones that I was very convinced may have been a weed, so I probably pulled way too many of those out before I realized that maybe I should leave them and see what they turn into. Then, back here, this is a lupine. So this is the first one I have blooming here. I love these. They're so, so pretty. Then over here, by these 2 sticks, I have some grapevine and asparagus. So next spring, I know I'm going to have to reinforce these sticks a little bit better. Because my grapevines were so small when we put them in, I knew they'd be okay for this year. And then I can do something prettier and more what I want aesthetically for next year to help reinforce them, because when they get bigger, they're going to be very heavy, and I'm going to want something better than just a couple sticks. So then, if you look overhead here, this is something that we found. We found this cool curved log as we were clearing trees. So we made sure to pull that one out while we were clearing so that it could be a fun garden feature as we went. So Josh helped me erect this guy because I would not have been able to lift that curved piece by myself. So then around the edges, I decided to do a few more peas because we love them and they look fun because they'll climb. So that's what I have right here. I do have just a couple beans starting to come, so I haven't picked any of these yet this year. But look at how fun these are. They have little purple speckles. Oh, so fun. So that guy's gonna keep going. And then as we go a little further, I don't really know what this guy is. He came from Mom. I think it's a geranium of some nature, but really don't quote me on that. So these little purple flowers go with him. So that's him. Let's see, what else have we got? I put a couple more little Swiss chards in here because I thought they'd go really pretty with this amaranth with the dark leaves. So this is something that I've never seen grown in my life. And I've had a couple gardeners in my life, so this is a fun experiment for me this year. So it's just starting to send out its little plume. Eventually it'll get really long, and so those are a fun thing that's usually used in flower arrangements. As we keep going, I have more cosmos. This mid-height flower are all zinnias. Here is my calendula some more. Throughout, I have skipped a couple peonies. This is probably my biggest one, but it has started to get some issues with some white mold. I do believe that that is a problem because of humidity, so it's probably gotten too much moisture, so I'm trying to be extra careful and not overwater it and make sure that there's no plants around it to really keep in that humidity. I've been trying to take extra good care of and baby that one. Let's see, what else have we got? So these are more zinnias. In the back there I have just two dills that appeared. So I just left those. This was an experiment. So this guy is 2 flower pots together, and then I siliconed where they're joining. So the bottom one is right side up and this top one is upside down. I siliconed the ring between them and then siliconed the bottom hole. And because they are this terracotta clay material, it's a porous material. So that means I can put water in this top hole and then the water will stay in my little container that I made. And so this is the only way to pour water in. And then because it's porous, it will slowly ooze the water out. So it's supposed to be a more regulated way to have a water release versus just like watering once a day. So this has been my experiment. To be honest, I haven't been super good about refilling it. But it should have more water and be more moist as we go down here. It's probably not because I forgot to fill it. So it has been a little experiment for me just to see how well it worked, because I haven't known anyone who has actually used these to water, but that's a fun experiment. Then as we keep going, I have some more cosmos. I don't have a whole lot in this area here on my right because I had some hostas here, and then hostas really like shade, and so they were all starting to get sunburnt. So before it got too hot, I decided to move them to a more shady location so that they could be happier. So then it was already too late to replant stuff, so there I pretty much only have weeds. So it is what it is, and I'll plant stuff there next year. Then I have some more lilies as we come up here. So this one is a daylily. Unfortunately, all of my flowers up here have been done blooming, so we'll just have to do some still frames of what these guys actually used to look like. So I have some daylilies, another iris. This one was so pretty. It's the only iris that I had bloom. It was a dark purple with white edges, and it was just so pretty. And then a couple different kinds of lilies. These shorter guys had, I think they were white, but then this taller one is a different kind. So he was more fragrant, and I could smell him as he came. As I walked into the garden, you could just smell that one flower, even when just one of them was blooming. And then I have two hostas in this corner where the tree is actually giving enough shade. This is a tree that I want to take down bits of it. I want to get rid of all of the dead material and clean it out. So then those hostas might need to go because then they'll have more sunlight on them. But I do want to leave this elderberry because these berries here are edible. They haven't turned color quite yet, but once they're ripe, they will turn a purpley color, and those will be edible. So eventually we will expand this garden and really trim up our trees to have a bigger, more peaceful garden. So Then I just have some more zinnias here, and then everything behind me is just what was here wild. So I have, these guys are thimbleberries. They're very similar to a raspberry, but a little bit seedier, if you will. And then these ones with the white canes and very white colored leaves are actually raspberries. So we picked a whole bunch of those earlier this summer, and they're now in our freezer because they are quite tasty. So this is everything in our garden. We do drag a hose over to this garden to hand water everything here, and when it's hot I do that. I was doing it every day, now it's kind of like every other day depending on how hot it is and if it's rained. So it's been working out really well. We use about one 275-gallon tote of water about a week if we're watering every day. So then that means if we spend an afternoon getting totes of water, then we can last about a month because we can have 3.5 totes per month. So it's worked out really, really well for us. I am excited for someday when we have an automated watering system, but we're not there yet. So that's the garden tour. Eventually it'll expand, but for this year, this is what we've got. So let me know if you have any comments or can identify that one plant that I didn't know the name of. So as we go down here, this is an area that we ended up clearing for our electrical easement to get our power, because straight ahead of me, well, pretty much straight ahead of me is our power lines. So we have two slight bends that we had to get our electrical through. So we had to clear all the trees here. Josh used the backhoe to trench in some conduit, and then the electrical company pulled all that conduit, and so now we need to make sure that we don't build over this because there's still an easement for the electrical company in case they ever need to access this line. So this area we can't do anything with that we're walking on, so it really will stay either like an ATV path or just a walking path. But then in here, this is such a cool area. It has so much personality already. This little green zen area, I love it so much. So I want to turn this into a garden space. I love how much elevation play there already is in here. So to give you some context of where we just walked from, way up there, there's a sunny area, and that's where that flower garden is. As we come in, the trees get more dense, and then there's a dip in our elevation here. So we're thinking about doing maybe next year, maybe not, we'll see. But we might do a water feature in here and use this as a retention pond to hold water for us, then we don't have to use those totes. That would be super cool because it would be beautiful and functional. So if it's functional, that means I can get Josh on board. So that means I get backhoe help. So we'll probably do that. So then, since we have this area that's almost like a pond already, it looks like it's already ready for it. We decided to hang this bench up over here. And so this is actually my high school shop project. So when I was in high school, I was not interested in shop class, but I was very interested in making a little structure out of balsa wood and using little brad nails to assemble it because I thought that would be just super fun. I went into this class to do that. I didn't realize that the second half of this class was shop class, so I decided to turn my shop project, i.e. this bench, more into an art project than a shop project. So I spent most of my time painting it, and then I convinced some of my friends to help me assemble it and grind off some of these bolts that I wasn't super comfortable with using a grinder at that point. But now I can use things like that and not be terrified. But in high school, that was not the case. So this has a story, and this was my first project, and so this will stay here, and then as we go over here, I really love how bright green this moss is, so I'm hoping that we can keep that as long as we possibly can, even if we do that pond project. So that little area where all of the weeds were because there were no plants is because I moved all of these hostas from there. So I have a whole bunch of different varieties. These all came from my mom. And so eventually, because this area is so shady, I should be able to split them more and really have a nice hosta garden here. So yeah, this is our hosta garden, and eventually it'll turn into more of a little oasis for us. So if you think that this garden has potential and you have any cool ideas for us to implement, because this will be next year's project, be sure to drop them in the comments below and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you!